A dispatch from dangerous territory. Peter Grester reports from the Somali capital Mogadishu on the militant group linked to Al-Qaeda. As Croatia prepares to join the European Union, Alan Little revisits Vukovar 20 years after the town split in two by the Yugoslav war. And I join the UN Goodwill Ambassador Angelina Jolie as she sees for herself the plight of refugees on the Italian island of Lampedusa as they flee the unrest in Libya. And Rachel Harvey reports on the tattoos that are taking Thailand by storm, but which are also upsetting religious and cultural sensibilities. Hello, welcome to Reporters. I'm Zainab Badawi. President Obama has said the death of Osama bin Laden has greatly weakened Al-Qaeda, but there are other militant groups who are known to have both the will and capacity to carry out terrorist attacks. One of those is Al-Shabaab in Somalia, who have close links to Al-Qaeda. They're fighting to topple the government in Somalia. Our correspondent Peter Grester made a rare and very dangerous trip beyond the front lines in the capital, Mogadishu.
Even by the standards of modern warfare, Mogadishu has suffered terribly. This isn't the result of aerial bombing, it's what 20 years of urban warfare does to a concrete city. The African Union is leading the fight against the Islamist rebels Al-Shabaab. They've made recent gains, but it is a grinding war of attrition.
Do you see a red house, a red loft house? Yeah. Are you seeing it? Yeah. Yes. Someone has just fired here. Yeah. There.
Okay. Is that mortars or...?
That's a mortar.
Okay.
That's a mortar.
The rebels are fighting to control all Somalia and take their war to the west. Away from the front, Somalis shelter wherever they can. This conflict has created an underclass of urban nomads who move whenever the fighting does. Mariam Ahmed fled to this abandoned government office block with her 7 children when the front line swept through their neighborhood.
We were hiding in the toilet. There was gunfire. My husband told me to take the children away. He said he'd look after the house. After some time, when he hadn't turned up, we decided to look for him, and my husband wasn't there.
She has no idea where her husband is. Now Mariam depends on food aid from a local agency. A drought is forcing people out of the country towards the violence of the city.
This feeding centre caters to about 5,000 people. And this madness, this chaos, this desperate panic for food happens every single day of the year. And it's not just here, but it's in at least 14 other places, right across Mogadishu.
In 4 years of fighting, the African Union has taken only a few square kilometres of the city. The force commander has less than half the troops he needs to win here.
Nobody can pretend that this is an African problem or this is a Somali problem. This is an international problem. But if we do not give it the attention it deserves, we will have to regret. It will grow and it will backfire on all of us.
While the West is engaged in its war on terror in Afghanistan, the crisis in Somalia continues to run out of control, largely ignored. Peter Grester, BBC News, Mogadishu.
The conflict in Libya has led to tens of thousands of people fleeing the unrest and heading for Europe. Many make a treacherous journey by sea to reach the tiny Italian island of Lampedusa, a rocky outcrop between Sicily and North Africa. From there, they are moved onto the Italian mainland. I joined the Hollywood actress and UN Goodwill Ambassador Angelina Jolie as she visited migrants there to highlight their plight on UN World Refugee Day. The idyllic coastline of Lampedusa masks a grim reality. So far this year, 1,500 migrants have perished in these waters, making the crossing from Libya alone. The thousands who do make it here are held in holding centres before being dispersed elsewhere in Italy. I went along with the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Antonio Guterres, and his celebrity Goodwill Ambassador Angelina Jolie to visit a former military camp being used to house young migrants. 300 migrants under the age of 18 are still being held in this detention centre in Lampedusa. Musa and Abdul Wahid are two Somali teenagers who left war-torn Mogadishu to work in the steel industry in Libya 3 years ago. Harassed by the authorities last month to leave at rifle point, they boarded an overloaded ship from Tripoli along with 800 other migrants who'd all paid $300 each. The ship capsized. These boys were among the 40 lucky survivors who had life jackets. As we moved away from the crowds, Angelina Jolie told me why she was particularly worried about the migrants here.
Boys we met from Somalia, they were born into war. They're from Mogadishu. They've known nothing but war since they were born. And then at 13 years old, they're sent off to go work somewhere and send money home. And so their little 13-year-old boys go and they work and they send money home and they're trying to do the right thing. And then war breaks out in Libya and then they're targeted. And they're targeted because they're darker skinned and they feel that somebody different or of a different color, of a different race is something that should be threatening to them, when in fact it's a beautiful thing when the world can be mixed and when we can learn from each other and share culture and it can enhance countries.
Lampedusa is not only the gateway into Europe for these migrants, it's also a picturesque island that relies heavily on tourism. The locals here, whilst not being unsympathetic to the plight of the refugees, are worried that their presence could dent the tourist trade and so have an impact on their livelihoods.
During the initial days of the crisis, we received 6,270 migrants. As a result, tourists stayed away, fearing seeing migrants sprawled all over our streets.
The Italian government has responded by speeding up the migrants' transfer off Lampedusa to the mainland, but it wants other EU countries to do more.
One of the most dramatic things we have in Europe is that we have a totally dysfunctional asylum system because situations are completely different from country to country. But the debate in Europe is to a certain extent artificial. We discuss here about some tens of thousands of people, but Pakistan has 1.9 million Afghan refugees. In Kenya we have 500,000 refugees, mainly from Somalia. So I think it's important to recognize that 4/5 of the world's refugees are in the developing world.
The uncertainty of the migrant status mirrors the uncertainties and upheavals in the region and beyond.